The 1940s. The New York City subway is doing pretty good and still expanding. The IRT, IND, BMT would merge into one unified system, and the city of New York took the private companies. The IND would be full of R9s from the previous video, and the BMT, renamed from BRT, was still running BMT standards, which haven't had a break since 1915. What's worse is that these cars have no designation of what route they're running. You just have to get on the train and pray you got on the right one. The BMT started noticing the slow unreliability of the standards and wanted new cars. The IND wanted new cars for extensions. So they ordered 400 brand new cars to the system in 1948. This would be designated as the R10 contract. Hey, MTP, this is about the R10 and R16, but what about the R11, the R12, the R14, the R15? Yeah, I know. Those cars will be getting their own videos soon. I just thought the R10s and R16s are very similar to each other, so I put them in one video to make it easier. The R10s will be numbered 1803 to 1852 and 3000 to 3349. They will be built by ACF, the same company that made the R1s and R4s. The R10s would cost around $100,000 in 1948, which is, in today's standard, is around $1.1 million. Capacity is 56 seats and the maximum speed is 55 miles per hour, 4 of single sets. Now, before these cars were delivered, R7A car 1575 was rebuilt after a wreck in 1946. The car would be the prototype for the R10, being rebuilt with an R10 body and interior. However, this car would not change its mechanical and electrical components, so it's still an R7A. It cannot be coupled to an R10. The R10s would be delivered around 1948. They would introduce many new innovations. For the first time, the car body was of an all-welded, low-alloy, high-tensile steel construction, basically meaning that the body was a lot stronger than the R9s. The R10s also featured a new braking system which would introduce dynamic braking. Dynamic braking reduced wear and tear on brake shoes and reduced maintenance costs. The R10s would also introduce air horns instead of whistles. The former cars, R9s and BMT standards, would have whistles to alert. The R10s had air horns, and the rest of the cars built after would have air horns as well. The R10s would have a much faster acceleration than the R9s, having a 2.5 mile per hour acceleration while the R9s had a 1.75 mile per hour acceleration. This gave the R10s the nickname Thunderbirds by crews and rail fans. The R10s would enter service on November 20th, 1948 on the A line. The cars would only be designated on the A line for some time, which sent some R1s to Coney Island Yard to relieve a car shortage. Now, I said the component differences with the R9s and R10s, but what about physical difference? Well, don't worry, there are a lot. The R10s had a different roof line, with it being more smoother and slanted. The right window would be covered, and side windows would be in a different order. The interior would be much different, as the seats will be made from stainless steel instead of the comfy seats on the R19s, and the fans were in a different position. Finally, there were the side roll signs. The R19s would have 3 roll signs on top of each other. 2 on top state the destinations, and the bottom would show the route. The R10s, though...
What the hell is this?
The roll sign would be a lot smaller. Whose idea was this? No one liked the side roll sign for the R10s. There were 2 destinations and then 1 route, but the route roll sign didn't even say what letter route it was. It just stated the branch. Imagine walking downstairs to catch the C train and you just see 8th Avenue Local. Well, where's the C train? Other than that, the R10s were, hey! Oh, hey BMT, where are my new cars? Oh, I thought no, you gave them all to the IND. Oh. I think I might have the solution for you. More new cars! The R16 contract would be made in 1955. R11, 12, 13, 14, 15 will be used for other cars, so the subway would order 200 more cars as R16. The R16 will be numbered 6300 to 6499, built by ACF and costing around $1.32 million in today's standards. Capacity is 70 seats and maximum speed is 55 miles per hour. Single units. The R10s and R16s had 2 different powered cars, Westinghouse power and General Electric power, which I guess is different in some way. The city realized their mistake with the R10 roll signs and put the standard roll signs seen on the R9s on the R16s. The R16s have a visible difference between the R9s and R10s. The roof is different and the design is smoother than the others. Before the R16s were delivered, a couple of R10s were given to the Eastern Division to train crew for the upcoming R16s. The R16s were delivered in 1954 and entered service in 1955. The R16 cars would replace Zephyr and Bluebirds. What are those cars? You'll see soon. Two R16 cars, 6318 and 6463, were painted gold for the Golden Jubilee celebration in 1955. In 1956, R16 6300 to 6349 were transferred to the I&D A line for the opening of the new Rockaway branch, and the MTA wanted the newest piece of equipment to run for the line's inaugural. They were returned back to the BMT shortly. In 1957, car 6494 was rear-ended by a BMT standard. In 1964, R16 6400 and 6418 switched numbers? In 1964, 9 R10 cars were painted red with black roofs and black skirts. In 1964 to 1965, R10s were painted in a bluebird scheme, with sky blue and white colors. In 1968, many R16s were painted to a bright red scheme. Then, in the 1970s, all the R10s and R16s received the silver and blue scheme. During the 1970s, R10s and R16s would be coupled up to random pieces of equipment and each other. Apparently, they mixed with R42s? Weird. In 1970, a train of R16s collided into a train of R40s at Roosevelt Avenue while running on the GG. Car 6304 was heavily damaged, likely scrapped. In 1979, the MTA was experiencing a large shortage due to the R46's problems. 6429 was rebuilt with a new front end, large windows, and new doors. It was a prototype for rebuilding the fleet to limit shortages. This rebuild would add modern interiors, air conditioning, and convert them to 4-car sets instead of single sets. I can see where PTA got their PLT4 design. This is a huge rebuild, honestly. This does not look like an R16. Rebuilding never took place and the car was eventually scrapped. In the 1970s and 1980s, the R10s were said to be the worst train cars by employees, being very unreliable. However, the MTA didn't have enough money to buy new cars to replace them, so they had to continue running the R10s. Just an edit, I forgot to put this here in the script, but in the 1970s to 1980s, the R10s were actually renumbered, from the original numbers being 1803 to 1852 and 3000 to 3349, to new numbers being 2950 to 3349. I guess they just wanted to change it to 2950, just to, ease it out. The R10s went around different yards, working on multiple lines for their lifetime. At an unknown date, 3047 was damaged and it was repaired with R16 parts, the rounded window being an obvious part. 3113 was damaged in a collision. In 1973, 3150 was damaged in a collision at 207th Street Yard. In 1978, R10 3274 and 3333 derailed at 59th Street Columbus Circle, and oh my god! In 1971, the MTA decided to make a transfer of IRT cars to Mushaloo Yard from Concourse Yard. Now, for context, IRT cars are much smaller than I&D and BMT cars. However, they use the same track gauge, so IRT cars can run on the I&D and BMT. While they were setting up the train, someone coupled up R10 3226 by accident. They ran the train up the 4 line and dragged the train through the Bedford Park Boulevard station as the R10 scraped on the platform. The R10 was brought back to the yard and returned to service. How do you even accomplish that? In 1963, R10s 3035 and 3135 were involved in an accident. 3135 was repaired and renumbered to 3035. 3035 was scrapped. 3055 accidents? In 1975, 3192 had an R42 front. Had an R42 front installed to the front as a prototype on rebuilding the fleet. This would have modern interior and air conditioning like that planned R16 rebuild. 3192 was scrapped after. Between 1984 and 1986, 110 Westinghouse powered cars had a light overhaul to get the entire fleet in a non-graffiti state. Looking good. However, the R10s and R16s' reliability continued to deplete. The R16s kept having electrical issues, so the TA decided to retire them in 1977 for R46s. 53 R10s were replaced by the R46, while remaining cars continued running in the worst state. However, the R46s had a lot of problems at the time. Cracks in the trucks were found and the R16s were brought back to the system to help out while the R46s were fixed. They kept the R16s running until 1983. However, more reliable R16s continued running on the BMT. R10s and the reliable R16s continued running until 1987, where all the R16s were retired and most R10s were. They were replaced by R68s. The last train of GE-powered R10s ran in 1988. The overhauled R10s kept running until 1989. In October 29th, 1989, a train of R10s led one final farewell, running on an excursion on multiple IND and BMT lines. That marked the end of the R10 and R16 legacy. Many cars were scrapped, however, a couple remain today in preservation. The R10 cars that were preserved, 3184 was preserved by the Railway Preservation Corporation, was displayed at the New York Transit Museum. It was repainted to its original gray and orange paint scheme. The car was restored and runs on many New York Transit Museum excursions. Car 3189 has been preserved by the New York Transit Museum. The car's experimental 3-passenger transverse seating. The car was repainted blue and used as a training car for road inspections at Pitkin Yard. The car was restored and now runs on different excursions, making an appearance at the Parade of Trains 2022, which I attended. The R16 cars preserved, 6305 and 6339, continue to stay stored at Coney Island Yard awaiting restoration. 6387 is preserved by the New York Transit Museum, seen on different excursions, which, yes, I've caught, thanks for asking. 6398 is preserved at the Trolley Museum of New York in Kingston. Car 6452 was located at PS 248 until 2004. It was in a Redbird scheme. The car was replaced by R110B3005 and the car was reefed. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate you for being this far into the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're interested in videos like this. I definitely plan on doing a lot more. Hope you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.